Hello everyone, this is Jay Watson. I'm going to show you how to create a simple responsive menu. It will make use of jQuery and will have like a click uh, toggle button uh, when it's being viewed on mobile so that the user can click and it'll toggle down. And I think you'll like how simple this is. It's really not complicated at all. So to start off, I have just a skeleton menu, just a basic menu. If you want to duplicate this code, you need to go ahead and pause the tutorial. You can see where I'm linking to a style sheet here. This is styles.css. Here are my styles. I'm using the CSS reset. And then I am styling the nav, the list items, the anchor tags, just a basic hover effect, really simple stuff. I'm also linking to an empty script, and you can see here at the bottom before the closing body tag, that's where I'm linking to that. So you probably want to go ahead and duplicate this before you move forward. Go ahead and pause the tutorial, and you'll just need index.html, styles.css, and script.js. And then I have everything where you can see what it looks like over here. And you can see this is just a basic menu with a simple hover effect. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing we want to do is we need the jQuery library. And jQuery is just a JavaScript library. It makes it much easier for us to do cool things with JavaScript, and then it also ensures that those cool things that we do with JavaScript are cross-browser compliant. So it's just great. It is the most popular JavaScript library, and if you want that, you can simply type in jQuery CDN. I'll just type Google's CDN. You can get this at so many different places. Yeah, you can download it if you want to. And so I'm just going to get the latest version here. Just copy that. And then we'll paste this above this script tag because this needs to be loaded first. And so we have all of our JavaScript there ready to go, linking to the jQuery library, and then we have our script. And I apologize for my voice. Bought my nephew a tent. They set that up last night, and of course I had the army crawl out there and scare them and holler really loud as I snuck up on them. Yeah, like seriously, that's what took my voice. Okay, so I'm going to do one thing too, just do as I do. I'm here in the head element, I'm going to add a meta tag, and then I'll explain what it does after I add it. So just do what I do right now. So we're going to make it the meta element, we'll have the name attribute, and we're going to set the viewport. And again, I'll explain this here in just a second. Content, and we're going to say width is equal to device, if I can spell, device width. And of course, always close out. Actually, this will all be in one query, I guess. Initial scale is equal to 1.0, maximum scale is equal to 1.0, and then user scalable is equal to 1.0. Really, we only needed this is the important bit of code. So I'll kind of explain what this is. So the viewport allows us to basically approximate pixels based on the user's visible area of a web page. So for example, if he or she has a mobile device, now with mobile devices, a ton of pixels are crammed in. So we're going to be using CSS media queries. So we'll basically say, hey, if the screen is smaller than X amount of pixels, we want to change the way that we're displaying this. So essentially we want to update our CSS. Now, but there was an article written in, I guess, 2010. It's called "Pixel is Not a Pixel," and you're like, I don't care about that, but it was a great article because it explains all this really well. And so what we have to do is we have to approximate our pixels, essentially our media queries, with the user screen. And so when we set if the pixel density of the output device is very different from that of the typical computer display, then the user agent, whatever the user is viewing the screen on, needs to rescale those values. And so again, like I said, basically to ensure that it renders correctly, we have to approximate the pixels based on the width of the screen. The initial scale specifies the zoom that we're at when visiting the page, and 1.0 does not allow zoom, again based on approximated pixels. And the maximum cell says, hey, this is the max that it will zoom. 1.0 does not. This is, essentially we're saying you cannot zoom. And user scalable, whether we allow zoom, and we're not allowing the user to scale. You can change this. You find this on a lot of mobile devices where they don't, or mobile websites, the mobile versions, the responsive version for mobile devices where they're not allowed to zoom. So that's what this does. Maybe it's a bit technical. The main thing that you need is just make sure that you have the width set to the device width so that it can approximate the pixels based on the user screen. And this is because you might have, imagine, some of the pixel density of some of the mobile devices. So if everything was just the same, you could have some pretty tiny text, although it would still be sharp. So that's what that does. We'll skip that. Just pretty much just do that if you don't understand it. So that's to ensure that when you are viewing it on a mobile device that it will show up correctly, because it might not even recognize your media queries if you do not. Okay. So we have our jQuery library. We have our script. So I'm going to come up to the top and we're going to add in our nav, we're going to add a toggle, a div with the class of, and we'll say toggle, yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll say toggle nav. That'll work. I love brackets, by the way. And let's add a span in here and give it a class of Hamburger. And I'm going to just do 3 vertical bars. Now, recognize that? And if we go look at this, it's going to look kind of weird, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to come over to our CSS then, and we're going to say, hey, toggle nav and Hamburger display none. Alright, so we won't see that. So now we'll actually start making some of this stuff work, okay? So here's where we actually start creating our media queries. So we're going to say at media, and then we'll say max width, and you know what? Let's see, what do I want to set? I guess 768 will work. So if a screen is 768 pixels or smaller, or approximates at that, right? Then we want to overwrite some of these CSS rules to ensure that our menu displays the way that we want. So the first thing I want to do is that toggle nav that we are currently hiding. Nav is, I want to display it as a block level element. Okay. And then I also want to give it a height, and I'm just going to say height 480 pixels, or XP, Windows XP. And then I'll go ahead and just put a border bottom on it. And I'll say 1 pix solid, or we'll say dotted. Yeah, 1 pix dotted, and then we'll just make it black. And that's all I want to do there. Now, for the hamburger button, this is really simple due to some of the new CSS 3 features. I need to display it, block as well. And then I'm going to say margin right 15 pixels. And what this does is, I really should do this later just where you can see, this is just bumping it off of the right edge because I'm going to align it right, so float right. You can make it center. Sometimes people do that actually. And I'm going to go ahead and increase the font size. And yeah, we'll say 48 pixels. Now, let's see, yeah, nothing's going to change here, but let me just, there you go, you can see what it looks like now. Okay, so this is what we're seeing right now. And then here's what we have to do, here's what actually makes this work, is that we need to use the CSS transform. Now, if you want to look up, you can add the WebKits to ensure that this works. This is becoming so where you don't need to, but you still will need to prelude those with dash WebKit and dash Moz and such to ensure that it's fully, cross-browser compliant. That'll work on older browsers as well. So you just specify rotate, and then you need to say how many degrees. And of course, we want it to be 180 degrees or 90 degrees, not 180. Or we'd have the same thing that we have there. And I think that's all we need to do. Well, we'll go and give it a height of 40 pixels. There we go. I think we're good there. There we go. It's looking pretty good. I think that's how we want it to look. And so next, what we want to do is we can go ahead and create, let's go ahead and say Hamburger hover effect. So just specify the cursor, right? And so that's how you style this. I mean, look, so now you can see where that's just like a link. So that's pretty simple. And then we want to change our nav list items. We want them to display as a block level element. And we'll go ahead and put a border bottom. And we'll do the same that we did for the main nav. And you can see now it displays, and you can see where the blue is actually just a feature of brackets, and that highlights. And so this is what it's looking like now. This is obviously not what we want it to look like yet, but we're not finished. And for our anchor tags, we'll give them a width of 100%, and we'll display them block and 0 padding. And we'll align center. Okay. And then we'll just go ahead and say for the last child of the list items to put like the border bottom. We'll say 3 pixels solid. Getting ahead of myself. 3 pixels solid black. And nav UL. So again, here's what we have here. I think, yeah. This is what we look like here, and I think we have everything set mostly how we want, except for this little major typo of 480 pixels instead of 40 maybe. How about that? Does that look a little better? Yeah. So we're set, except right now we click on this and nothing happens. So I told you this was pretty simple. So the main thing is we're this is all set to display. Like if I don't have, I'll show you here. Let's take out this display none. Save this. I actually don't even have to with live preview. This is how it'll look when you toggle down. So pretty much with the CSS, you're going to set up your media query to display just how you want it to display on mobile. Okay. So for example, here's how it looks. Then once we're less than 768 pixels, we're going to our mobile menu. Now right now, so you can see it's really pretty simple, and I just gave you the classes to do that, some of which I probably should have explained a little bit more, but you can see, so this is a regular menu, and then when we get beneath or below 768, then we go to the block menu. That's essentially what changes. That's the main thing that happens. Pretty simple, and of course, by default, we do not want it to display. So now when you're at that mobile menu, this is what it's going to look like. So now we have to get to jQuery. We've already linked to the jQuery library. I keep going one desktop over. So here's our CSS. Let's go to our script. Now, I do want to say something. If you've never worked with jQuery, you're really not going to get a lot out of this, except maybe that you might get a little bit out of it. But if you at least just work through the first few modules with Code Academy, this would help you understand how this works. And so I'll try to explain a little bit about it. So the first thing we want to do, well, I really don't want to explain much about this. Document.ready.function. Okay, so this is in jQuery. You're going to get used to doing this over and over and over again. And so this is just saying if the page is loaded, okay, if the document object model has been loaded, then we're ready to do stuff. And you don't want to do anything unless the page has loaded. So this would be, if you were just using pure JavaScript, it would be like body on load. So when the body's loaded, do this. That's what's happening here. So when the DOM has loaded, document object model is loaded, we're ready to do stuff. Everything's going to go inside this function. So then we're saying, this is jQuery syntax here, and so this is just saying this is a function to follow. So everything that we do will be inside here. That's just the way jQuery works. So now we're going to actually, the little hamburger button that we had right here, and we gave it a class of hamburger. So we need to grab a hold of that, and we're going to do that by using the class selector dot hamburger. And then jQuery has a dot click function built in. jQuery has a lot of cool stuff built in. So again, we're making this a function. And notice how I'm tabbing out my code. So now inside of here, we want stuff to happen. And so one of the main things that we want to happen is we want a slide toggle to happen. And so if we go back and look at our CSS, we have this right here, this UL set to display none, which that's what collapsed this, because remember when I didn't have that, it was displaying. Okay, so we need to actually change this in order to make our code work. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to grab a hold of that particular element, and I'm going to say, okay, the nav UL, I'm just using single quotes. Double quotes works as long as you don't mismatch your quotes. And I'm going to say slide toggle. And so if you look here, now we can click and we have a working menu. And that actually totally everything works. There is just one problem with this menu currently. If we do this a few times and we, I think we close it and then we come back, it actually causes our menu items to disappear. And that's because we essentially have this set to not display the UL. So we've basically updated our class. And since the page hasn't refreshed, it hasn't reloaded the latest version of it. So if you look, the latest version, of course, is the UL is supposed to display, right? So we've set this to not display, and the page hasn't refreshed. So we have this problem that we have to deal with where, oh, there's no menu items. Now when you refresh, it'll update it, but we can't have that. So instead of just having a basic slide toggle here, we're going to actually make this a function. And so look what we can do here. So I'm going to say slide toggle 400. So this is just the speed in which it toggles. And then I'm going to say function. So also inside here, here's what's going to happen. And I need to make sure that the toggle class is updated. So what we'll say is on this, like when this is toggled, I want to add a class. And so I'm going to say this dot toggle class, and I'll explain more how this works in just a second. Expand. And you're like, what is this expand? You will learn here in a second. Dot CSS. Well, I just did dot CSS. And so then I'm going to say display. And you're like, what's going on? Display what? And so now I need to actually go into my CSS. I'm going to add a class. And basically, this class, I'll explain it here. Let me go here. So above the media query, let's add an expand class. And this expand class is just simply going to ensure that our stuff shows. So this will be display block. And so what we're going to do, so now this is added above the media query, and we haven't added, in our HTML, we haven't added it to anything. Okay, so in your HTML, you're not making use of this. But with your jQuery, so this nav.ul, so this nav.ul is actually going to, I'm sorry, I got this weird voice thing. But as it removes, or as it adds to, as it chooses to toggle on this display, because right now it's currently set not to show, right? So it'll automatically toggle to the opposite of that. So right now it's not going to display, but then it will display. So it's going to show this class, and then when we click, it will remove it and not show this class. At the same time that it's doing that, we're going to toggle this expand class. So initially expand is set, and then it'll actually automatically be applied to this, which is the UL, okay? So when this is toggled off, or this is toggled on, expand will be toggled off. When this is toggled off, expand will be toggled on. And so it'll continually be the inverse. So basically, when it's set not to display, expand will be set to display. Now when you're at mobile, this UL will override this because it's beneath that in the style sheet. But when you're at the desktop, the expand will ensure that the UL is displaying. I probably didn't explain that well. So I'm going to refresh. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I don't even need to refresh. So let's go here, here. So remember how it wouldn't display when we would go above? Now we do not have that problem. Because the expand class is being applied to the UL, it's not at mobile, so it knows now that, hey, this is set to display. This is a really simple tutorial. Again, it's really basic, but this is a skill set that you need to have. You need to be able to build a responsive menu. And so take this, make it cooler, make it better. There are a lot of different ways to create this hamburger button. I think some people even will use an image. And then a lot of people will use, I think probably one of the most common ways is just to use the span classes, and then you'll style them as 3 bars, and there'll be absolute classes within a container. Again, I think those are the 3 primary ways that people create this. But this was, you have to admit, that was pretty simple. Good luck, guys. I apologize about the the voice thing.